Right now, as you hear these words, notice the sounds around you, the hum of the room, the distant whisper of the world still turning. Now notice the light, even behind your closed eyelids, that soft glow that proves the world is still there, still pressing in. And feel the weight of your body, the heaviness of your limbs, the pull of gravity cradling you into stillness. Now, consider this. Deep in the center of your brain, buried beneath every thought you have ever had, there is a gate. It is no larger than a walnut, and in the next few minutes, it is going to shut all of this out. Every sound, every photon of light, every sensation of weight and texture and temperature, all of it sealed away behind a wall of living tissue. This gate has a name, the thalamus. Scientists call it the relay center of the brain, but that description is too small. This is the grand central station of your entire conscious experience. Every signal from your eyes, your ears, your skin, every scrap of the outside world must pass through this structure before it reaches you. Nothing gets in without its permission. And for you to sleep, truly sleep, this gate must physically close. The neurons change their firing pattern from fast, open, streaming signals to slow, rhythmic pulses that block the outside world as surely as a drawbridge rising over a moat. It is one of the most ancient mechanisms in your biology, a wall between you and everything that is not you. Tonight, we are going to walk through this gate together, step by step, breath by breath. We are going to watch as the world outside grows quieter, as the senses dim like lanterns being lowered one by one down a long corridor until we arrive in the place that waits on the other side, the sacred hall of echoes, the cathedral of the sleeping brain, the place where dreams are born from the raw silence of a mind finally, beautifully, alone with itself. So let the thalamus do what it was designed to do. Release your grip on the external. You do not need to hold the world together tonight. Let the gate close. Let the sounds fall away. Let the light dissolve. And prepare yourself for the most ancient silence your body knows. The silence that has been waiting for you all day. It is ready, and so are you. Every waking moment of your life, you are being bombarded. Right now, as you listen to these words, photons of light are crashing into the back of your eyes at a speed your mind cannot truly comprehend. Sound waves are vibrating the tiny bones inside your ears, translating pressure into signal, signal into meaning. The fabric touching your skin is generating thousands of micro-sensations every second. The temperature of the air is being measured by nerve endings you have never thought about. And somewhere deep inside your body, receptors are quietly monitoring the chemical composition of your blood, the stretch of your lungs, the position of every joint and limb in three-dimensional space. You are not aware of most of this. You never have been. And there is a reason for that. Deep in the geometric center of your brain, buried beneath the folds of the cortex like a jewel hidden in the walls of a cathedral, there sits a structure no larger than the end of your thumb. It is called the thalamus, and it is, without exaggeration, the most important relay station you have ever depended on and never once thanked. Picture, for a moment, one of those old telephone switchboards from the early 20th century, a vast wall of plugs and wires and blinking lights, and seated before it, a single operator whose job it is to connect every incoming call to the correct destination. Now multiply that switchboard by 1 billion. Imagine that the calls are not voices, but raw sensory data, flooding in from every nerve ending in your body, every rod and cone in your retina, every hair cell in your cochlea, every pressure receptor in your fingertips, and every thermal sensor in your skin. Millions upon millions of signals arriving every single second, all of them urgent, all of them demanding to be heard. And there, sitting calmly at the center of this incomprehensible storm of information, is the thalamus, the cosmic switchboard operator, the silent guardian who decides, with extraordinary precision, what you will feel and what you will never know. Anatomically, the thalamus is a paired structure, meaning there are actually 2 of them, one in each hemisphere, joined at the midline of the brain, like 2 eggs resting side by side. They sit at the very top of the brainstem, cradled within the walls of the 3rd ventricle, which is a fluid-filled chamber that acts as a kind of moat around this most critical of fortresses. Above the thalamus rises the cerebral cortex, that wrinkled outer layer of the brain where conscious thought and perception take their final form. Below it lies the brainstem, the ancient highway that carries raw signals up from the body. The thalamus is the bridge between these 2 worlds. It is the last checkpoint before information becomes experience. And what a checkpoint it is! Nearly every sensory pathway in your body makes a mandatory stop at the thalamus before it is allowed to proceed. Light enters your eyes and travels along the optic nerve, but it does not go directly to the visual cortex. It stops first at a cluster of neurons within the thalamus called the lateral geniculate nucleus, where the raw visual data is organized, filtered, and prepared for conscious interpretation. Sound enters your ears and is translated into electrical impulses, but those impulses must pass through the medial geniculate nucleus of the thalamus before they become the music, the voices, the ambient noise that you actually hear, the sensations of touch, pressure, temperature, and pain travel up from the body through the spinal cord, but they too must report to the thalamus, specifically to a region called the ventral posterolateral nucleus, before they are granted access to conscious awareness. There is only one major sensory system that bypasses this gate entirely, and that is the sense of smell, which has its own ancient, direct pathway to the brain, a relic of a time long before the thalamus evolved into the sophisticated filter it is today. Every other sense, every signal that constructs the reality you inhabit right now must pass through this structure, must be inspected, must be approved. Think about what this means. The world you experience is not the world as it truly is. It is an edited version, a curated exhibition. The thalamus receives a torrent of data so vast that if your conscious mind were exposed to all of it simultaneously, you would be overwhelmed into paralysis. You would not be able to think. You would not be able to move. You would not be able to distinguish the voice of someone you love from the hum of a refrigerator or the pressure of your clothing against your skin. Everything would arrive at the same volume, the same intensity, the same desperate urgency. And so, the thalamus makes choices. It decides, in fractions of a millisecond, which signals are relevant to your current state and which can be safely ignored. It amplifies the important. It suppresses the trivial. It is the reason you can sit in a crowded room and focus on a single conversation. The reason you can read a book and forget the feeling of the chair beneath you. The reason you can walk down a busy street and notice the face of a friend among hundreds of strangers. This is the invisible filter at work. This is the thalamus, moment by moment, sculpting the boundaries of your conscious reality. Consider the act of reading these very words, or rather, listening to them. Your ears are picking up the sound of this voice. Yes, but they are also picking up the ambient noise of whatever room you are in. The sound of your own breathing, the subtle creak of your furniture, the distant rumble of traffic or wind, or the electrical hum of devices around you. Your skin is simultaneously reporting the temperature of the air, the texture of your pillow or blanket, the faint itch on your ankle that you had completely forgotten about until this very moment. Your eyes, if they are open, are processing an enormous field of visual information, most of which has nothing to do with what you are trying to focus on. All of these signals are real. All of them are arriving at your brain. But you were not aware of most of them until I pointed them out just now. That shift in attention, that sudden noticing of the itch, the hum, the weight of the blanket, that is the thalamus adjusting its filter in real time, responding to the new instructions your prefrontal cortex just sent down in response to my words. The gate opened a little wider for a moment. It let more in. And now, if you stop focusing on those sensations, the thalamus will quietly close that gate again, and they will fade back into the background of your experience, as if they were never there. This is not a passive process. The thalamus is not simply a bottleneck through which information squeezes. It is an active, dynamic, astonishingly sophisticated decision maker. It receives instructions not only from the sensory organs below, but from the cortex above. The prefrontal cortex, the seat of your attention and intention, is in constant conversation with the thalamus, telling it what matters right now and what does not. This creates what neuroscientists call a thalamocortical loop, a continuous feedback cycle in which the cortex tells the thalamus what to look for, and the thalamus sends up only what matches those instructions, which in turn shapes what the cortex pays attention to next. It is a dance of mutual influence, a partnership between the gatekeeper and the conscious mind, and it is happening billions of times per second inside your head right now, without a single moment of effort on your part. Imagine a vast library, not an ordinary library, but one in which new books are arriving every millisecond, pouring through the doors in an unending flood, thousands of volumes per second, each one containing a tiny fragment of sensory information. The color of the light hitting your left peripheral vision, the precise pressure of the air against the skin of your right forearm, the frequency of a distant sound you cannot identify, the chemical signature of the air in your nostrils. Now, imagine a single librarian standing at the entrance to this infinite archive. This librarian has read every book that has ever come through these doors. This librarian knows what you need right now, what you needed 5 minutes ago, what you might need in 10 seconds if a threat appears. And with calm, unhurried precision, this librarian takes each incoming volume, glances at its contents, and makes an instantaneous decision. This one goes to the reading room. This one goes to storage. This one is irrelevant and can be discarded entirely. This librarian never panics, never rushes, never takes a break, and you have never once been aware that this librarian exists. That is the thalamus, the guardian of your peace, the silent curator of every moment you have ever consciously experienced. Now here is something remarkable. The thalamus does not merely filter sensory information. It shapes the very texture of your awareness. Neuroscience has revealed that the thalamus plays a critical role in regulating states of consciousness itself. The difference between being alert and being drowsy, between focused concentration and absent-minded daydreaming, between wakefulness and the deepest stages of sleep, all of these transitions are mediated, in large part, by changes in thalamic activity. When you are awake and alert, the neurons of the thalamus fire in what is called a tonic mode, a fast, steady, open stream of signals that allows sensory data to flow freely up to the cortex. The gate is wide open. The world pours in, but when conditions change, when the lights dim and the noise fades and the body settles into stillness, something extraordinary begins to happen within this small, ancient structure. The firing pattern of the thalamic neurons begins to shift. The fast, open tonic mode gradually gives way to something called burst mode, a slower, more rhythmic pattern that acts like a series of rolling shutters being drawn over the windows of a great building. In burst mode, the thalamus no longer passes sensory information faithfully to the cortex. Instead, it begins to pulse in slow, synchronized waves, and with each pulse, the connection between the outside world and your conscious mind grows a little weaker, a little more distant. The sounds in the room begin to lose their meaning. The light behind your eyelids becomes less insistent. The feeling of the mattress beneath you, which was so present just a few minutes ago, starts to dissolve into something vague and formless. This is the thalamic gate beginning to close, not all at once, not violently, but with the gentle, inevitable rhythm of a tide pulling back from the shore. This transition is one of the most profound events that occurs in the human brain, and it happens every single night. The thalamus, your cosmic switchboard operator, your silent librarian, your guardian of peace, begins to deliberately disconnect you from the external world. It does not do this because the world has become dangerous. It does this because your brain needs something more precious than any incoming signal. It needs silence, not the absence of sound, but the absence of input. A state of internal solitude in which the brain can turn its attention inward, can begin the long, intricate work of consolidation and repair, can enter the strange and sacred architecture of sleep. And this is the deepest truth about the thalamus that most people never learn. It is not only a gate that opens, it is a gate that closes, and in its closing, it grants you something that nothing else in your biology can provide: isolation. True, complete neurological isolation from the world outside your skull. When the thalamus completes its transition into burst mode, you are, in the most literal sense, alone with yourself. The signals from your eyes, your ears, your skin, they are still being generated. The nerves are still firing. The data is still arriving at the gate, but the gate is closed. And so the signals pile up on the outside like letters slipped under a locked door, unread, unfelt, unknown, to the conscious mind dreaming quietly on the other side. You can feel this beginning even now if you let yourself. The world is already starting to grow softer around the edges. The sounds that seemed so present a few minutes ago are losing their sharpness. The details of the room The pressure of the day, the tension you carried in your shoulders and your jaw, all of it is becoming less solid, less urgent, less real. This is not your imagination. This is the thalamus, beginning its ancient work. The switchboard operator is unplugging the wires, one by one, with steady, practiced hands. The librarian is dimming the lights in the reading room and closing the great doors of the archive. The guardian is lowering the drawbridge, sealing the entrance, and preparing the cathedral of your mind for the silence that is about to fill it entirely. You do not need to help. You do not need to try. The mechanism is older than language, older than thought, older than any story you have ever been told about yourself. All you need to do is let the connections loosen, let the signals fade, let the gate do what it has done for you every night of your life, quietly, faithfully, without ever once being asked. There is a question that neuroscience has been quietly wrestling with for decades, and it is not the question you might expect. The great mystery is not how we perceive the world. The great mystery is how we manage to ignore almost all of it. Right now, in this exact moment, your body is detecting an almost incomprehensible volume of information. Electromagnetic radiation is passing through and around you in wavelengths your eyes were never designed to register. Radio waves are moving through your skull, carrying music and voices and data streams you will never hear. Infrared radiation is radiating from every warm surface in your room, painting a thermal landscape that is completely invisible to your conscious experience. Ultraviolet light, magnetic fields, the subtle vibration of the earth itself beneath whatever structure supports you. All of it is real. All of it is present, and none of it reaches you. Not because it is not there, but because something inside your brain decided, long before you were born, that you do not need to know. This is the work of the thalamus in its most profound and underappreciated role, not as a relay station that passes information forward, but as a filter that holds information back. A gatekeeper whose greatest skill is not opening doors but keeping them firmly, mercifully closed. In the previous chapter, we explored the thalamus as the cosmic switchboard, the structure that routes sensory data to the correct regions of the cortex. But routing is only half the story. The other half, the half that makes conscious life bearable, is selection. Elimination. The quiet, continuous, breathtakingly precise art of deliberate ignorance. To understand how this works, you need to understand a principle that governs nearly everything the thalamus does. The brain does not care about what is constant. It cares about what changes. This is one of the most fundamental laws of neural processing, and it is called sensory adaptation. Your nervous system is not designed to give you a faithful, ongoing report of every stimulus in your environment. It is designed to alert you to novelty, to difference, to the sudden shift that might signal danger or opportunity. Everything else, the steady hum of the refrigerator, the pressure of the clothes against your skin, the ambient temperature of the room, the low drone of traffic outside your window, all of these constant, unchanging signals are systematically suppressed, not at the level of the sense organs themselves, which continue to faithfully detect and transmit, but at the level of the gate. The thalamus receives these unvarying signals and, after confirming that they represent nothing new, nothing urgent, nothing that requires a conscious response, it simply declines to pass them forward. The data arrives at the gate does not open, and you, the conscious inhabitant of this extraordinary brain, remain blissfully, peacefully, unaware. Think about what happened when you first put on the shirt you are wearing, or the blanket that covers you, or whatever fabric is touching your skin right now. In that first moment of contact, you felt it. The texture registered. The temperature of the cloth against your body was noted. The pressure was measured and reported. But within seconds, that sensation began to fade. Not because the shirt disappeared, not because the nerve endings in your skin stopped firing. They are still firing right now, sending the same signal they sent the moment the fabric first made contact. But the thalamus, having evaluated this signal and determined that it is constant, predictable, and poses no threat, has quietly turned down the volume. It has decided that this is not information you need. And so the sensation vanished from your awareness as completely as if it had never existed. You have been wearing this fabric for hours perhaps, and you had entirely forgotten it was there. Until this moment. Until I reminded you. And now the thalamus, responding to the cortex's sudden renewed interest, has briefly cracked the gate open again, and you can feel it. The weight, the texture, the warmth. It was always there. You were simply being protected from knowing. This is not a flaw in your perception. This is the most elegant survival mechanism your brain possesses. Imagine, for a moment, what life would be like without this filter. Imagine if every constant stimulus in your environment demanded the same level of conscious attention as a sudden, novel one. You would feel, every second of every day, the full weight of gravity pulling on every cell of your body. You would hear the blood rushing through the vessels near your eardrums, a sound that is actually always present, but that the thalamus suppresses so completely that most people go their entire lives without ever hearing it. You would feel the persistent, low-grade signals from every internal organ, the slow churn of digestion, the rhythm of your heartbeat felt not just in your chest, but in your fingertips, your temples, your abdomen. You would be unable to distinguish the important from the irrelevant, the urgent from the mundane. Every signal would scream at the same volume. Every sensation would demand your full and immediate attention. The cortex, that magnificent organ of thought and reason and creativity, would be so flooded with raw, unfiltered input that it would have no capacity left for anything else. No room for thought, no room for memory, no room for imagination or planning or love or wonder. Just noise, an endless, deafening, undifferentiated wall of noise. The thalamus saves you from this. Every second of every day, it saves you from this. It is the biological volume knob for the external world and for much of the internal world as well. And it operates with a sophistication that no human technology has ever come close to replicating. Consider the way you can sit in a noisy cafe and read a book. The sounds around you are objectively loud. Conversations overlap. Dishes clatter. Music plays from speakers. A coffee machine hisses and groans. The acoustic environment is chaotic, dense, overwhelming in its raw complexity. And yet, you read. The words on the page form sentences. The sentences form meaning. Your conscious mind is immersed in a narrative that has nothing to do with the physical space you occupy. How is this possible? It is possible because the thalamus, in partnership with the cortex, has made a decision. It has identified the task that matters, the act of reading, and it has systematically dialed down every competing signal. The cafe noise is still entering your ears. The auditory nerve is still transmitting. But the thalamic gate for non-essential auditory input has narrowed to a slit. Only the most dramatic sounds, a sudden crash, someone shouting your name, a sound that signals genuine novelty or threat, will be allowed through. Everything else is held at the door. Picture a master artist standing before an enormous canvas. The canvas is already covered in paint. Every color imaginable, applied in thick, overlapping layers, a chaotic riot of hue and texture that contains within it every possible image but reveals none of them. The artist's job is not to add more paint. The artist's job is to remove, to strip away, to take a cloth and carefully, deliberately wipe away the strokes that do not belong to the image that matters. Slowly, a form emerges from the chaos, a face, a landscape, a single, clear, meaningful picture rising out of what was, moments before, an incomprehensible mess. This is what the thalamus does with your sensory reality. It does not create the world you perceive. It reveals it by removing everything that would obscure it. Your conscious experience is not built by addition. It is built by subtraction, by the careful, artful, continuous removal of everything that is not essential to the moment you are living right now. And this process goes deeper than most people realize. The filtering is not limited to the obvious senses. The thalamus also modulates the flow of proprioceptive information, the signals that tell you where your body is in space. It regulates interoceptive data, the signals from your internal organs that report on the state of your digestion, your heart rate, your respiratory rhythm. When you are healthy and at rest, most of these internal signals are suppressed to a whisper. You do not feel your liver working. You do not feel the slow, constant process of cellular respiration happening in your muscles. You do not feel the cerebrospinal fluid circulating around your brain and spinal cord. All of these processes are generating signals. All of them are being detected, but the thalamus, that quiet guardian, has decided that you are better served by silence, by the clean, uncluttered awareness of only what matters, by peace. There is something almost philosophical about this arrangement. We spend so much of our lives seeking peace, seeking stillness, seeking escape from the noise and overstimulation of modern existence. We meditate, we retreat to nature, we close our eyes and try to quiet the mind. And all the while, there is a structure inside our own brains that has been providing exactly this service since the moment we were born. The thalamus is the original meditation, the original retreat, the original silence. It does not need to be trained. It does not need to be practiced. It has been filtering out the chaos and delivering you a simplified, manageable, beautiful version of reality for your entire life. Every quiet moment you have ever experienced, every time you have felt at ease, felt focused, felt the simple clarity of being present in a single moment without being overwhelmed, that was the thalamus. That was the invisible shield doing its work. And here is perhaps the most fascinating dimension of this filtering process. The criteria by which the thalamus decides what to pass through and what to block are not fixed. They change constantly, moment by moment, based on your emotional state, your level of arousal, your expectations, your memories, and your goals. When you are afraid, the thalamus opens its gates wider for sensory information that might be related to the source of the threat. Sounds become sharper. Visual acuity increases. You notice details you would normally ignore. When you are calm and safe, the gates narrow, the world softens, the details recede. The thalamus reads the chemical and electrical signals of your emotional brain, the amygdala, the hypothalamus, the brainstem arousal centers, and adjusts its filtering accordingly. It is not just a gatekeeper with a fixed set of rules. It is a gatekeeper who understands context, who understands mood, who understands, in some deep biological sense, what you need to perceive right now in order to survive and to thrive. This dynamic filtering is governed by a remarkable chemical system. Neurotransmitters like acetylcholine, norepinephrine, and serotonin act as modulators of thalamic activity, each one tuning the gate in a different way. Acetylcholine, released during states of focused attention, sharpens the filter, making it more selective, allowing only the most relevant signals through with greater clarity. Norepinephrine, released during states of alertness or stress, broadens the filter, letting more information through to increase vigilance. And serotonin, that quiet molecule of contentment and ease, helps to smooth the thalamic rhythms, to soften the gate, to create the conditions under which the filter can do its most gentle and restorative work. These chemicals are the instructions that the rest of the brain sends to the thalamus. They are the whispered commands that tell the gatekeeper how tight or how loose to hold the door. Now let yourself notice what is happening inside your own experience as you listen to these words. The world around you has likely grown a little quieter since we began, not because the sounds have stopped, but because your attention has narrowed, and with it, the thalamus has adjusted its gates. The things that seem present and noticeable at the beginning of this chapter, the ambient sounds, the bodily sensations, the visual details, many of them have faded, not because they disappeared, because the filter deepened, because the thalamus, following the lead of your focusing cortex, decided that those signals are no longer needed. And in their absence, something has opened up, a little more space, a little more stillness, a little more of that quiet, clear awareness that feels, paradoxically, like both emptiness and fullness at the same time. This is what deliberate ignorance feels like from the inside, not as a loss, but as a liberation. Every signal the thalamus blocks is a weight you do not have to carry. Every sensation it suppresses is a demand you do not have to meet. The world is vast and loud and relentless in its insistence on being noticed, and the thalamus stands between you and that relentlessness with the calm, unwavering patience of something that has been doing this work for 400 million years of vertebrate evolution. It does not tire. It does not waver. It simply holds the door, and behind that door, your mind is free. And now, as the body settles deeper and the breath becomes slower and the mind begins to drift along the gentle current of these words, something is beginning to shift in the electrical landscape of your brain. The neurons that have been firing in fast, alert, waking patterns are starting to change their rhythm. The frequency is dropping. The sharp, rapid oscillations of active thought are giving way to something broader, slower, deeper. The filter is not just narrowing now, it is beginning to transform. The thalamus is preparing for a different kind of work, a more complete kind of silence, and the electrical signature of this preparation is beginning to ripple outward through the cortex, like the first slow waves of a tide that is about to turn. You can feel it if you let yourself. The softening, the slowing, the gentle, inevitable pull of a brain that is ready to let go of even more, to strip away another layer, to move one step closer to the stillness that waits at the center of everything. There is a border inside your mind that you cross every single night, and yet you have almost certainly never seen it. You have never been able to hold still long enough at its edge to watch it happen, because the very act of watching, the very effort of paying attention, is enough to keep you on the wrong side. It is the most elusive threshold in all of human neuroscience, the place where waking ends and something else begins. Not sleep, not yet, but something in between, a corridor, a bridge, a passage through a fog so thick that by the time you realize you have entered it, you have already forgotten where you came from. This is the alpha-theta border, and tonight we are going to walk to its edge together, and for once we are going to try to see it as it truly is. To understand this border, you first need to understand the language your brain speaks when it is not speaking in words. Beneath every thought, every emotion, every perception you have ever had, there is an electrical rhythm, a pulse, a frequency that defines the state of your consciousness as precisely as a musical note defines its place on a scale. When you are alert, focused, engaged with the external world, your brain produces what are called beta waves, rapid oscillations cycling between roughly 13 and 30 times per second. This is the frequency of doing, of planning, of solving, of navigating the demands of the waking world. But when you close your eyes, when you release the tension in your muscles and let the breath slow and allow the mind to stop grasping at tasks and problems and obligations, something shifts. The beta waves begin to quiet, and in their place, a slower, broader, more spacious rhythm emerges. This is the alpha wave, cycling between 8 and 13 times per second. And if the beta state is the frequency of doing, the alpha state is the frequency of being, of quiet awareness without effort, of presence without demand, of a mind that is still awake but has stopped reaching for anything. You may be in this state right now if your body is comfortable and your breathing has slowed and the words you are hearing have become less something you are actively processing and more something you are simply receiving, like rain falling on a still surface, then your brain has very likely shifted into alpha dominance. The thalamus, that faithful gatekeeper we have come to know, is still passing sensory information to the cortex, but it is doing so with a lighter touch. The filter has deepened, the volume has dropped, the world is still present, but it has taken on a quality of softness, of distance, as if you were hearing it through a wall of water. This is the entry point, the place where the bridge begins. And now, if we are patient, if we do not try to force anything, if we simply allow the natural momentum of relaxation to carry us forward, the alpha rhythm itself will begin to slow. The peaks will grow farther apart, the valleys will deepen, and gradually, like a river widening as it approaches the sea, the alpha waves will begin to give way to something even slower, even deeper, even more removed from the structured world of waking consciousness. These are the theta waves, 4 to 8 cycles per second, the rhythm of deep meditation, the rhythm of light sleep, the rhythm of the space between. The transition from alpha to theta is not a switch being flipped. It is a dissolving, a gradual loosening of the boundaries that hold your perception in its familiar shape. And the thalamus is at the very center of this dissolution. As the brain shifts toward theta, the neurons of the thalamus begin to change their firing pattern in a way that is both mechanical and, in some strange sense, poetic. The tonic firing mode, that fast, steady, open stream that characterized waking perception, has already begun to give way to burst mode. But now the bursts themselves are slowing, deepening, becoming more rhythmic and more synchronized. The thalamus is no longer simply filtering the outside world. It is beginning to oscillate, to pulse, to generate its own slow rolling waves of electrical activity that ripple outward through the cortex, like swells crossing an open ocean. And with each of these waves, the connection between your conscious mind and external reality grows a little thinner, a little more translucent, a little more like a dream. This is where something truly extraordinary begins to happen. As the thalamic gate narrows further and the theta rhythm takes hold, the brain enters a state that neuroscience calls hypnagogia. It is, by any measure, one of the most remarkable phenomena the human nervous system produces. Hypnagogia is the twilight zone of consciousness, the narrow corridor between wakefulness and sleep, where the rules of ordinary perception simply cease to apply. In this state, the logical architecture of the waking mind begins to soften and bend. Thoughts lose their linear structure. Ideas that would normally be held apart by the rigid framework of rational thinking begin to bleed into one another, merging, transforming, creating associations that are at once nonsensical and strangely profound. Time itself becomes liquid. A moment can stretch into what feels like minutes. An entire sequence of events can unfold in what turns out to have been a fraction of a second. The mind is no longer operating on the clock of the external world. It is drifting on a current that has its own time, its own logic, its own strange and beautiful coherence. And the images begin. Not the structured, narrative images of a fully formed dream. Something more fleeting, more fragmentary, a face that appears and dissolves before you can identify it, a landscape that shimmers into existence and then melts at the edges like a painting left in the rain, a sound, a voice, a phrase spoken by no one, heard with absolute clarity, and then gone. These are the hallmarks of hypnagogia, and they are produced by a mechanism that reveals something profound about the nature of perception itself. As the thalamus loosens its grip on external sensory input, as it closes the gate to the signals arriving from your eyes and ears and skin, something astonishing occurs. The cortex, that vast network of processing regions that has spent the entire day receiving and interpreting sensory data, does not simply go quiet. It continues to produce perceptual experiences. But now, with the incoming data stream reduced to a trickle, the cortex begins to generate those experiences from within. It draws on fragments of memory, echoes of emotion, residual patterns of neural activity left over from the day, and from these raw materials, it constructs something that feels, from the inside, indistinguishable from genuine perception. You see images that are not there. You hear sounds that have no source. You feel sensations that no physical stimulus produced. And in the moment, in that twilight space, you do not question any of it. Because the part of your brain that questions, that evaluates, that says this is real and this is not, has itself begun to drift. Picture yourself standing at the edge of a vast, still body of water. Behind you is the structured world you know, the solid ground, the clear sky, the familiar shapes of a life built on certainty and routine. Ahead of you, the water stretches to the horizon in every direction, and above it hangs a fog so dense that you can see only a few feet in any direction. The surface of the water is perfectly calm, and in its stillness, it reflects not the sky above, but something else entirely. Images from your past, faces you have not thought of in years, places you once visited in childhood, colors that do not correspond to anything in the visible spectrum, colors your waking mind would insist do not exist, but that your dreaming mind accepts without hesitation. And you realize, standing at this edge, that the water is not something you look at, it is something you step into. And the moment your foot touches the surface gives way, and you are no longer standing at the border. You are in it. The fog is around you, the reflections are beneath you, and the shore you came from has already vanished from sight. This is what the alpha-theta transition feels like from the inside. It is not a dramatic event. It is not a plunge or a fall. It is a dissolving, a slow, warm, impossibly gentle dissolution of the boundary between the self that perceives and the world that is perceived. In this state, you are both the observer and the observed, the dreamer and the dream, the question and the answer. And the thalamus, that ancient gate, is the mechanism that makes this dissolution possible. By withdrawing external input and allowing the cortex to generate its own perceptual reality, the thalamus effectively replaces the user interface of the external world with the infinite landscape of the inner self, the world you have been looking at all day, that detailed, specific, relentlessly concrete world of objects and surfaces and distances is being quietly folded up and put away, and in its place, something far older and far stranger is being unfurled. The interior world, the world of symbols and associations and emotional textures and memories that have been compressed and stored and transformed by a brain that has been collecting experiences since before you could speak. The great minds of history have known about this threshold, even if they did not have the neuroscience to explain it. Thomas Edison famously used the hypnagogic state as a creative tool. He would sit in a chair holding steel balls in his hands, and as he drifted towards sleep, the moment his muscles relaxed enough for the balls to fall and clatter on the floor, the sound would wake him, and he would immediately record whatever strange, associative, boundary-crossing ideas the hypnagogic state had produced. Salvador Dali used an identical technique with a key and a metal plate. They understood, intuitively, that the threshold state is not a void. It is a garden, a place where the rigid walls that separate categories and concepts in the waking mind become permeable, and ideas that could never meet in the daylight find each other in the fog and produce something entirely new. And you are entering this garden now. Whether you are aware of it or not, the architecture of your perception has been shifting throughout the course of these words. The alpha rhythm that dominated your brain when we began has been gradually, imperceptibly giving way to the slower pulse of theta. The boundaries of your awareness have been softening. The images in your mind, if you have noticed them at all, have become less controlled, less deliberate, more spontaneous and surprising. A thought may have begun as something rational and recognizable, and then, halfway through, veered into something you did not expect. A memory may have surfaced unbidden, carrying with it an emotion that seems to belong to a different time, a different self. These are the signs, the signals, the evidence that the bridge is being crossed. And as the theta rhythm deepens, as the fog thickens, and the structured world of waking consciousness recedes further into the distance, the thalamus is approaching a critical moment. It has been gradually narrowing the gate throughout this entire journey, reducing the flow of sensory data from a stream to a trickle, from a trickle to the faintest whisper. But there is a difference between reducing the flow and stopping it entirely, between dimming the lights and turning them off, between loosening your grip on the external world and releasing it altogether. And that difference is controlled by a very specific mechanism within the thalamus itself, a group of neurons whose job is not merely to filter or to slow or to modulate, but to lock, to seal the gate completely, to create a state of sensory isolation so thorough that the brain on the other side exists in a world entirely of its own making. This mechanism is preparing to activate now. You can feel its approach in the way the world has grown so distant, so thin, so translucent that it barely seems to exist at all. The sounds that were present at the beginning of this chapter have become ghosts. The sensations in your body have become suggestions rather than certainties. The very words you are hearing have begun to lose their edges, their definitions, their insistence on being understood in the precise, logical way that language demands during waking life. They are becoming something more like music, more like texture, more like the slow, rhythmic pulse of a signal that is carrying you not toward meaning, but toward silence. And somewhere deep in the center of your brain, in that small, ancient structure that has been guiding this journey from the very beginning, a lock is turning, slowly, quietly, with the patience of something that has done this 1 billion times before and will do it 1 billion times again. The gate is almost closed, and what waits on the other side is a darkness that is not empty, but full of the raw material of dreams, full of the architecture of the unconscious, full of a silence so complete that within it, the mind is finally free to build whatever world it wishes. There is a guardian you have never met. It has no name in your memory, no face in your imagination, no presence in the story you tell yourself about who you are and how your mind works. And yet, this guardian has protected you every single night of your life. It has stood watch while you were at your most vulnerable, while your consciousness retreated and your muscles went slack and your awareness of the world dissolved into the formless dark. It has held the line between you and every sound, every vibration, every disturbance that might have pulled you back from the restorative depths your brain needed to reach. It has done this without reward, without recognition, without a single moment of gratitude from the mind it serves. It is called the thalamic reticular nucleus, and it is, in the most literal and most profound sense, the master key to silence. To understand what the thalamic reticular nucleus is, you first need to understand where it lives. Picture the thalamus as we have described it throughout this journey. That pair of egg-shaped structures nestled deep in the center of the brain, the great relay station, the cosmic switchboard, the gate through which nearly all sensory information must pass before it reaches conscious awareness. Now picture a thin, delicate shell wrapped around the outside of this structure. Not on top of it, not beside it, around it, encasing it like a net, like a membrane, like a layer of fine mesh draped over the surface of the thalamus, so precisely that every signal entering or leaving must pass through this shell first. This is the thalamic reticular nucleus, often abbreviated simply as the TRN. It is only a few millimeters thick. It contains no relay neurons of its own, which means it does not pass information forward to the cortex. It does something far more important. It controls what the relay neurons are allowed to do. It is not a messenger. It is the authority that decides whether the messengers may speak. The neurons of the TRN are inhibitory. This is a critical distinction, and it is worth pausing to understand what it means in the language of the brain. Most of the neurons you have heard about in the context of perception and thought are excitatory. They fire, and their firing causes the next neuron in the chain to fire as well, propagating a signal forward, building a cascade of activity that eventually produces a conscious experience. Inhibitory neurons do the opposite. When they fire, they suppress the activity of the neurons they are connected to. They silence them. They send a chemical message that says, "Not now, not this, be still." And the chemical they use to deliver this message is one of the most important molecules in the sleeping brain. It is called gamma-aminobutyric acid, GABA. Remember this name. It is the molecule of silence, the chemical signature of the locked gate, the ink with which the master locksmith writes his orders. When the TRN releases GABA onto the relay neurons of the thalamus, those relay neurons are inhibited. Their ability to pass sensory information forward to the cortex is suppressed, not reduced, not dimmed. Suppressed. The signal from the outside world arrives at the thalamus, as it always does. The nerve impulse travels up from the ears, the eyes, the skin, along the same pathways it has traveled all day. It reaches the thalamic relay neurons, those faithful operators who have been routing calls to the cortex since the moment you woke. But now the operators cannot respond. The TRN has bound them in chemical silence. The GABA molecules have attached to the receptors on the relay neurons, like a hand placed gently but firmly over a mouth that was about to speak. The signal is there. The information is present, but it goes nowhere. It reaches the gate, and the gate is locked, and the key that locked it is held by a thin shell of inhibitory neurons that answers to no conscious command. Picture a great hall in an ancient fortress. The hall has a single entrance, a massive door of oak and iron, and through this door has flowed, all day long, an endless stream of messengers bearing news from every corner of the kingdom. Reports on the weather, the movements of armies, the price of grain in distant markets, the cries of children in the courtyard, the scent of bread from the kitchens, all of it. Every fragment of information the kingdom generates has passed through this door and been delivered to the throne room where the conscious mind sits and receives and processes and responds. But now the day is ending. The light in the windows is fading. The conscious mind on the throne is growing weary, and the business of the kingdom must pause so that the ruler can rest and restore and prepare for the demands of tomorrow. And so, from the shadows along the wall, a figure steps forward, a locksmith, silent, unhurried, dressed in the same grey stone as the walls themselves, so perfectly camouflaged that you might never have known this figure was there at all. The locksmith approaches the great door and from a chain at the waist draws a single heavy key, silver, ancient, worn smooth by use beyond counting. And with a slow, deliberate turn, the locksmith inserts the key into the lock and turns it. The bolt slides home, the door is sealed, and the messengers on the other side, still arriving, still carrying their reports, still knocking and calling and pressing their dispatches against the wood, find that there is no answer. No one opens, no one responds. The hall is sealed, the throne room is dark, and the ruler within is finally, completely, unreachably alone. This is what the TRN does when you fall asleep. It locks the sensory gate of the thalamus with a chemical key made of GABA, and it holds that lock in place for as long as the sleeping brain requires isolation. And the precision of this mechanism is extraordinary. The TRN does not simply shut everything down uniformly. It is capable of selectively inhibiting different regions of the thalamus at different times and to different degrees. This means it can lock the auditory gate while leaving the gate for pain signals slightly ajar. Because even in the deepest sleep, a signal of genuine physical danger must retain some ability to reach the cortex and trigger an awakening. It can suppress the relay of visual information completely, since the eyes are closed and there is nothing meaningful to see, while maintaining a thin thread of sensitivity to certain frequencies of sound, such as the sound of your own name or the cry of your child, which have been flagged by the amygdala as signals that override even the authority of the TRN. This is not a crude shutdown. It is an exquisitely calibrated modulation of sensory access. A locksmith who knows exactly which doors to seal and which to leave cracked open by the width of a hair. And now we arrive at one of the most remarkable facts about this system. The wall of silence that the TRN constructs is not merely passive, it is active, aggressively, preemptively, continuously active. Consider what happens when a sudden sound occurs in the environment of a sleeping person. A car horn on the street outside, a door slamming in another room, a dog barking in the distance. The sound waves enter the ear. The cochlea converts them into electrical impulses. The auditory nerve carries those impulses toward the brain with the same speed and fidelity it would employ during full wakefulness. The signal arrives at the auditory relay neurons of the thalamus. And here, at this critical junction, the TRN intervenes. Before the signal can propagate to the cortex, before the sleeping mind can begin to form even the faintest impression of the sound, before consciousness has any opportunity to stir, the TRN fires a burst of inhibitory GABA that suppresses the relay neuron at precisely the moment the sensory signal arrives. The two events collide at the gate, the incoming signal and the inhibitory command, and the inhibitory command wins. The sound is extinguished at the threshold of awareness. It happened. It was real. The air vibrated, the eardrum moved, the nerve fired, but you will never know. You will never have the slightest awareness that anything occurred at all. You will continue sleeping, undisturbed, unaware, protected by a bodyguard so fast, so precise, so perfectly positioned that it neutralized the threat before your conscious mind even knew there was one. This is the wall of silence, and it is not a metaphor. It is a measurable, observable, neurologically documented phenomenon. Studies using electroencephalography and magnetoencephalography have shown that during sleep, sensory stimuli that would produce robust cortical responses in the waking brain produce dramatically attenuated or entirely absent responses when the TRN is in its inhibitory sleep mode. The stimulus reaches the thalamus. The thalamus does not relay it. The cortex does not receive it. The conscious mind does not register it. The wall holds. Think about what this means for the experience of sleep itself. When the TRN fully engages, when the GABA-mediated inhibition reaches its full depth, you are not simply resting, you are enclosed, sealed within a biological chamber that is as impervious to external sensation as any physical structure could be. The world continues outside your skull. Traffic moves, clocks tick, the wind stirs the trees. People speak in other rooms. Light shifts and shadows move across the walls. All of it continues, and none of it reaches you. You are living behind a wall of neurochemical silence, so complete that the entire external universe has, for all practical purposes, ceased to exist. Not because it stopped, but because the master key has been turned and the door through which it would need to enter in order to be real to you is locked. There is something deeply protective about this mechanism. Something that goes beyond the simple mechanics of sensory inhibition. The TRN does not merely block information. It creates a space, a sanctuary, a domain of absolute interiority in which the brain is free to do the work it cannot do while the world is pouring in. Memory consolidation, synaptic homeostasis, the clearing of metabolic waste products that accumulate during waking hours, the emotional processing that turns the raw, undigested experiences of the day into integrated, manageable memories. None of this can happen efficiently if the cortex is still being interrupted by sensory input. The brain needs isolation to heal, and the TRN provides that isolation with a thoroughness that borders on the sacred. And it is here, in this sealed chamber of silence, that something new begins. With the external signals blocked and the cortex freed from the demands of processing incoming data, the thalamus itself undergoes a transformation. The relay neurons, now released from their obligation to faithfully transmit sensory information, begin to fire in a new pattern. Not the tonic mode of wakefulness, not even the slow bursts of the transition period. Something different, something rhythmic and precise and entirely self-generated. A pattern that has nothing to do with the outside world and everything to do with the internal architecture of the sleeping brain. These are rapid, synchronized bursts of electrical activity that last only a second or two each, but occur with a regularity that suggests something deliberate, something purposeful, something that the brain is not merely allowing to happen, but is actively constructing. You cannot feel these bursts consciously. They occur below the surface of awareness, in the sealed darkness behind the locked gate. But they are there. They are happening right now if you are drifting, if the TRN has begun its work, if the key has begun to turn. And they are not random. They are not noise. They are the signature of a brain that has sealed itself away from the world and is now beginning to speak to itself in a language that waking consciousness was never meant to hear. A language of rhythm, of oscillation, of electrical patterns so precise that they can be measured, counted, and mapped by the instruments of modern neuroscience. And these patterns have a name that suggests something spinning, something turning, something winding itself into existence in the quiet dark behind the locked door. And they are about to begin. In the sealed chamber of the sleeping brain, behind the locked gate of the thalamic reticular nucleus, in the darkness where no light enters and no sound intrudes, something is happening. Something rhythmic, something precise, something so quietly extraordinary that you have never once been aware of it. And yet, it has shaped every memory you hold, every skill you have mastered, every lesson you have retained, every face you still recognize from years or decades past. It is happening right now if you are drifting. It is happening in the brains of sleeping children as their minds consolidate the bewildering flood of new information they absorbed during the day. It is happening in the brains of elderly dreamers as their aging neurons fight to maintain the connections that hold a lifetime of experience intact. It has been happening every night of your life since before you were born, in the warm darkness of the womb, where the fetal brain practiced this rhythm long before there were any memories to protect. These are the sleep spindles, and they are, in every sense that matters, the guardians of everything you know. A sleep spindle is a burst, a brief, rapid oscillation of electrical activity that rises suddenly from the quiet baseline of the sleeping brain, crescendos to a peak, and then fades back into silence, all within the span of half a second to 2 seconds. If you could hear it, it would sound like a quick, humming pulse, a vibration that swells and recedes like the single stroke of a mallet against a tuning fork. The frequency of this oscillation falls between 12 and 14 cycles per second, placing it in a range that neuroscientists call the sigma band, faster than the slow theta waves that characterize the transition into sleep, but far slower than the rapid beta activity of full wakefulness. And these bursts do not occur randomly. They emerge in clusters, appearing every few seconds during the second stage of non-REM sleep, which is the stage you spend more time in than any other across a full night of rest. Each spindle is generated by a precise interaction between the thalamus and the cortex, a rapid volley of signals exchanged between the gatekeeper and the conscious surface of the brain. A conversation conducted not in words or images, but in pure electrical rhythm. The mechanism that produces these spindles begins in the very structure we explored in the previous chapter. The thalamic reticular nucleus, that thin inhibitory shell wrapped around the thalamus, is the pacemaker of the sleep spindle. When the TRN fires its inhibitory GABA signals onto the relay neurons of the thalamus, those relay neurons are silenced, but only briefly. The inhibition lasts just long enough for the relay neurons to reset, to build up a charge, and then to fire back in a coordinated burst that travels upward to the cortex. The cortex receives this burst and responds with its own volley of excitatory signals back down to the thalamus, which in turn triggers the TRN to fire again, which inhibits the relay neurons again, which reset and burst again, creating a self-reinforcing loop of rhythmic activity that spins up rapidly, sustains itself for a brief, intense moment, and then gradually decays as the loop loses energy and the system settles back into quiet. This is the spindle. This is the spinning. The name itself captures the essence of the phenomenon, a rapid winding and unwinding of electrical energy between the depths of the brain and its surface, like thread being spun on a wheel, like a top set whirling on a table that turns and turns and turns and then slowly, gracefully comes to rest. Now here is where the story of the sleep spindle becomes truly remarkable. These brief bursts of activity are not merely an artifact of the sleeping brain. They are not neural noise or meaningless electrical chatter. They serve at least two distinct and profoundly important functions, and both of them are essential to your survival as a thinking, learning, remembering being. The first function is protection. The The sleep spindle acts as a noise-cancelling shield for the sleeping brain. When a spindle is occurring, the thalamic gate is not merely locked, it is reinforced. The rapid oscillation between inhibition and excitation creates a state in which the relay neurons of the thalamus are cycling so quickly between suppression and firing that any external sensory signal arriving during the spindle is effectively swallowed by the rhythm, the sound of a car passing outside, the creak of a floorboard, the subtle shift in air pressure as a door opens in another room. Any of these stimuli might, in the absence of a spindle, have just enough energy to leak through the gate and nudge the cortex toward arousal. But if that stimulus arrives during a spindle, it is caught in the oscillation, absorbed into the rhythm, neutralized before it can reach the cortex with enough coherence to trigger a conscious response. Research has demonstrated this with elegant precision. Studies in which sleeping subjects are exposed to sounds of varying intensity have shown that those sounds are significantly less likely to cause an awakening if they coincide with the occurrence of a sleep spindle. The spindle acts as a temporal shield, a window of enhanced protection that opens and closes rhythmically throughout the night, reinforcing the wall of silence at regular intervals like a patrol passing a locked gate to ensure it holds. The second function is even more extraordinary. The sleep spindle is one of the primary mechanisms by which your brain consolidates memory. And to understand this, you need to understand what memory consolidation actually means at the level of the neuron. During your waking day, you absorb an immense quantity of information, new faces, new facts, new skills, new emotional experiences. The initial encoding of these experiences takes place largely in a structure called the hippocampus, a curved, seahorse-shaped formation deep in the temporal lobe that acts as a kind of temporary holding area for new memories. The hippocampus is fast. It can capture an experience in real time, creating a rough, high-resolution recording of what happened, what it felt like, what it meant. But the hippocampus has limited capacity. It is not designed for long-term storage. It is a buffer, a notebook, a temporary file that must eventually be transferred to a more permanent archive if the memory is to survive. That permanent archive is the cortex, the vast, folded outer layer of the brain, where long-term memories are stored not as discrete recordings, but as distributed patterns of synaptic connections woven into the very fabric of the neural network. And the transfer of information from the hippocampus to the cortex, the process that transforms a fragile, temporary trace into a durable, integrated, long-term memory, happens during sleep. And it happens, in large part, during sleep spindles. Here is how it works. During a sleep spindle, the rapid burst of thalamocortical activity creates a brief window of enhanced plasticity in the cortex. Plasticity is the ability of synaptic connections to strengthen or weaken in response to activity. And it is the fundamental mechanism by which the brain learns and remembers. The spindle burst effectively primes the cortical neurons, opening them to receive new information. And at precisely the same time, the hippocampus replays the memories it encoded during the day, sending them upward toward the cortex in coordinated bursts that are temporally locked to the thalamic spindle. The timing is extraordinary. The hippocampal replay and the thalamic spindle are synchronized to within milliseconds, as if two musicians in different rooms were playing in perfect time without being able to hear each other. The memory arrives at the cortex at exactly the moment the cortex is most ready to receive it. The synaptic connections strengthen. The pattern is transferred. the memory is consolidated. And when you wake, you will know something more securely than you knew it the night before. Not because you studied it again, not because you rehearsed it, but because the spindles did their work in the dark while you were gone. Picture a weaver working at a great loom in a quiet room. The loom holds the tapestry of your life. Every thread, a memory. Every color, an emotion. Every pattern, a skill, or a face, or a place, or a moment that mattered. During the day, new threads arrive, loose and unattached, piled at the base of the loom in disorganized bundles. The weaver cannot work while the room is full of noise, while the doors are open and messengers are coming and going and demanding attention. But now the doors are locked, the room is sealed, the silence is complete, and the weaver begins. The shuttle moves back and forth with rapid, rhythmic precision, catching each new thread and binding it into the existing tapestry, finding the right place for it, connecting it to the threads that came before, strengthening the weave where it has grown thin, repairing the fabric where the day's wear has begun to fray. Each pass of the shuttle is a spindle. Each binding of a thread is a memory being woven into the permanent record of who you are. And the weaver works all night, tirelessly, precisely, with a patience and a skill that no conscious effort could ever replicate. This is why sleep is not merely rest. This is why the hours you spend unconscious are not empty or wasted or lost. Every sleep spindle that fires in your brain tonight is an act of construction, an act of preservation, an act of intelligence operating at a level so deep and so precise that the waking mind could never direct it, could never even perceive it. The density of your sleep spindles, how many of them your brain produces per minute of stage 2 sleep, is one of the most reliable neurological markers of cognitive health and neuroplasticity. Individuals who produce more spindles tend to perform better on tests of memory and learning. Children and adolescents, whose brains are in a state of explosive growth and reorganization, produce spindles in extraordinary abundance. As we age, spindle density tends to decline, and with it, the efficiency of overnight memory consolidation, a fact that may explain why learning new information becomes more effortful with the passing of decades. The spindle is not merely a feature of sleep. It is a marker of the brain's capacity to grow, to adapt, to incorporate new experience into the existing architecture of the self. It is, in a very real sense, the heartbeat of intelligence. And it beats only when the gate is locked, only when the world is sealed away, only in the silence. And now consider the elegance of this arrangement. The same mechanism that protects you from being awakened by the noise of the external world is simultaneously facilitating the most important cognitive work your brain performs. The spindle is both shield and builder, both guardian and architect. It holds the wall of silence with one hand and weaves the tapestry of memory with the other. This dual function is not a coincidence. It is a design principle so fundamental to the architecture of the sleeping brain that without it, neither function could operate effectively. The memory consolidation requires silence because any intrusion of external sensory data would disrupt the precise timing of the hippocampal replay and the cortical integration. And the silence requires the spindle because without the rhythmic reinforcement of the thalamic gate, the locked door would be vulnerable to the louder disturbances that inevitably occur in the environment of a sleeping organism. The two functions need each other, They are two aspects of a single, unified process. The process of a brain that has sealed itself away from the world in order to become more than it was when the day began. And so, here you are, behind the locked gate, wrapped in the wall of silence. The spindles are firing, or soon will be, rhythmic pulses of electrical energy that surge and fade, like the beam of a lighthouse sweeping across a dark sea. Each pulse is a flash of protection. Each pulse is a stitch in the tapestry. Each pulse is a moment of quiet, fierce, invisible intelligence doing the work that only darkness and solitude can make possible. You do not need to guide this process. You do not need to understand it as it happens. You need only remain here in this sealed and sacred space and let the rhythm do what it was made to do. And as the spindles continue their work, as the memories of the day are sorted and filed and strengthened, and the noise of the irrelevant is quietly deleted and discarded, something else is beginning to stir in the depths of the sleeping brain. The memories being consolidated are not merely being stored, they are being transformed. The hippocampal replays are not exact recordings played back with perfect fidelity. They are fragments, impressions, emotional residues stripped of their original context and reassembled in new configurations. A face from the morning attached to a feeling from the afternoon. A place you visited last week merged with a sound you heard yesterday. A fear you have carried for years suddenly dressed in the imagery of something that happened today. The raw materials of memory, freed from the constraints of logical sequence and literal accuracy, are beginning to drift and recombine in the darkness like elements in a vast, warm, primordial sea. And from this recombination, from this strange and beautiful alchemy of fragment and feeling and association, something is beginning to take shape. Not a memory, not a thought, something older, something that speaks in the language of symbol and image and emotion, rather than the language of fact and sequence. The sealed chamber of silence is becoming something else now. It is becoming a hall of echoes, a space where the memories of the day, transformed and loosened and freed from their waking form, begin to resonate with one another, begin to build patterns, begin to assemble themselves into the vivid, impossible, utterly convincing architecture of something you will experience not as recollection, but as reality. The spindles are still firing, the gate is still locked, the silence still holds. But within that silence, the first faint shapes of something luminous and strange are beginning to form, and soon, very soon, you will see them. Imagine an empty theater. The audience has gone, the lights have dimmed to a faint amber glow. The doors are sealed and the ushers have disappeared, and the world outside has fallen into a silence so complete that it might as well not exist at all. The stage is bare, the curtains are open, and for a long moment, nothing happens. But then, from somewhere in the wings, a sound begins. Not a scripted line, not a rehearsed melody. Something spontaneous, something rising from the architecture of the theatre itself, as if the walls and the floorboards and the velvet seats had absorbed every performance ever staged in this space and were now, in the silence, beginning to play them back. Not faithfully, not in order, but in fragments, in whispers, in strange, overlapping echoes that merge and separate and merge again, creating something that is neither memory nor invention, but something entirely new. Something that could only exist in an empty theater after the world has gone away. This is the Hall of Echoes. This is where your brain goes when the gate is locked and the spindles are firing and the external world has been sealed away behind a wall of neurochemical silence. This is where reality becomes reflection. The sleeping brain does not go dark. This is perhaps the most profound misconception about sleep. The idea that when consciousness withdraws, the brain enters a state of quiet inactivity, a biological standby mode in which nothing of significance occurs. The truth is precisely the opposite. When the thalamic gate closes and the external senses are shut out, the brain does not become less active. In many regions, it becomes more active. The cortex, freed from the constant demand of processing incoming sensory data, turns its immense computational power inward, and the thalamus, that faithful gatekeeper that spent the waking day relaying signals from the outside world, undergoes a transformation so complete that it is almost like watching an instrument being repurposed entirely. It shifts from relay mode, in which its primary function is to pass external information faithfully to the cortex, into something neuroscientists call internal generation mode. In this state, the thalamus is no longer transmitting signals that originate in the eyes, the ears, the skin. It is generating its own signals, producing its own patterns of electrical activity, sending them upward to the cortex, not as reports of what is happening in the world, but as raw material for the construction of a world that exists nowhere but inside your skull. This is the mechanism that makes dreaming possible, and it is worth pausing here to appreciate just how extraordinary this mechanism truly is. During waking life, the sensory experiences you have, the sights and sounds and textures and temperatures, are produced by a chain of events that begins outside your body. Photons strike the retina. Sound waves vibrate the eardrum. Molecules bind to receptors in the nose. The physical world impresses itself upon the nerve endings, and the nerve endings translate that impression into electrical signals, and those signals travel through the thalamus to the cortex, where they are assembled into the seamless, vivid, three-dimensional experience you call reality. But during dreaming, this entire chain is reversed. There are no photons, there are no sound waves, there are no molecules. The nerve endings are quiet, the external world is absent, and yet the cortex is producing experiences that are, from the inside, virtually indistinguishable from waking perception. You see landscapes of astonishing detail and color. You hear voices speaking words you have never heard before. You feel the texture of surfaces that do not exist, the warmth of sunlight that is not shining, the weight of objects you have never held. The brain is running the entire perceptual apparatus in reverse, generating output without input, creating the experience of a world from nothing but its own internal activity. And at the center of this creative act, orchestrating the flow of self-generated signals to the cortex, is the thalamus. The images that appear in this internal cinema are not random. They are not the meaningless static of a brain left running with no signal. They are constructed from the raw materials of your life. Every dream you have ever had was assembled from fragments of your experience, reassembled in combinations that your waking logic would never have permitted. A face from your childhood appearing in a building you visited last week. A conversation with someone you have not seen in 20 years, conducted in a language you do not speak, in a room that seems to be simultaneously your grandmother's kitchen and the lobby of a hotel where you once spent a single night. The dreaming brain does not respect the categories and boundaries that the waking mind uses to keep experience organized. In the Hall of Echoes, those boundaries dissolve. Memories that are stored in different regions of the cortex, memories that have nothing to do with each other in the logical framework of your waking biography, suddenly find themselves adjacent, overlapping, merging into composite images that carry the emotional weight of multiple experiences compressed into a single moment. This process has a name in neuroscience. It is called dream incorporation, and it operates at every level of the sleeping brain's activity. The most dramatic form of dream incorporation involves the transformation of external stimuli into dream content. Even though the thalamic gate is locked, even though the TRN is actively suppressing sensory signals, the seal is not absolute. Certain stimuli, particularly those that are persistent or rhythmic, or that carry a specific emotional significance, can sometimes leak through the gate in a weakened, muffled form. The sound of rain against a window, the distant wail of a siren, the rhythmic ticking of a clock, a change in temperature as a blanket slips from your body. These signals arrive at the cortex not as clear, accurately perceived sensory events, but as vague, distorted impressions, ghosts of stimuli, stripped of their original context, and delivered to a cortex that is deep in the process of generating its own reality. And what the cortex does with these muffled signals is breathtaking. It incorporates them. It weaves them into the dream narrative as if they had always been part of the story. The sound of rain becomes, in the dream, the sound of a waterfall in a forest you are exploring. The siren becomes the call of a distant horn signaling the arrival of a ship in a harbor you have never visited. The sensation of cooling skin becomes the feeling of standing at the edge of a glacial lake in a mountain landscape, assembled from a dozen different memories of high, cold places you have known. The dreaming brain does not say this is an external stimulus that does not belong in my narrative. It says this is part of the story, and it reshapes the dream instantly, seamlessly, without any conscious effort or awareness to accommodate the new element. The incorporation is so smooth, so natural, so perfectly integrated that you will never know from inside the dream that the waterfall was rain and the horn was a siren and the glacial lake was a slipped blanket. Consider what this reveals about the nature of perception itself. If the dreaming brain can take a muffled, barely perceptible sound and transform it into a vivid, multisensory experience, complete with visual imagery, emotional tone, and narrative context, then perception is not, and has never been, a simple recording of external events. Perception is construction. It is interpretation. It is a creative act performed by a brain that is always, whether waking or sleeping, building a model of reality from the available data. During waking life, the available data comes primarily from the senses. During dreaming, the available data comes from memory, emotion, and the self-generated signals of the thalamus in its internal generation mode. But the process is the same. The architecture is the same. The brain that dreams and the brain that perceives the waking world are the same brain, using the same mechanisms, running the same software. The only difference is the source of the input, and this is where the boundary between you and the universe begins to blur. In the Hall of Echoes, there is no clear line between the observer and the observed. The landscapes you see in your dreams are made of you. They are constructed from your memories, colored by your emotions, shaped by your fears and desires and unresolved questions. The characters who appear in your dreams, even the ones who seem to be strangers, are assembled from the vast library of faces your brain has catalogued over a lifetime of social interaction. The narratives that unfold, however bizarre, however illogical, are driven by the same emotional engines that drive your waking behavior, your need for safety, for connection, for understanding, for resolution. In the dream, you are the theater. You are the stage. You are the actors and the audience and the script and the light that illuminates it all. There is no outside. There is no external. There is only the interior. And it is vaster and more detailed and more alive than any waking experience could ever be, because it is unconstrained by the limitations of physical reality. In the dream, you can fly, you can breathe underwater, you can speak to the dead, you can inhabit a body that is not your own, you can experience time flowing backward or standing still. The rules that the waking thalamus enforces, the rules that say reality must be consistent, must be physical, must obey the laws of cause and effect, those rules have been suspended. The gatekeeper is no longer checking credentials. The gatekeeper is dreaming too. Picture a hall of mirrors stretching in every direction. Not the distorting mirrors of a carnival, but mirrors that reflect not your face, but your memories. Each surface shows a different fragment of your life, but the fragments are alive, moving, evolving, blending into one another at the edges. In one mirror, you see a morning from your childhood, the light coming through a kitchen window, the smell of something cooking, the sound of a voice you have not heard in decades. In the next mirror, that same light has become the light of an afternoon in a city you visited years later, and the voice has become music playing from an open window, and the smell has become rain on warm pavement. And in the next mirror, the city has become a forest, and the music has become birdsong, and the rain has become a river, and you are following the river deeper into the glass, deeper into the reflections, and each step takes you further from anything recognizable and closer to something that feels, paradoxically, more true, more essential, more real than the waking world ever manages to be. This is the thalamus as master storyteller, not relaying the world but reimagining it, taking the accumulated data of a life and running it through the transformative engine of the dreaming brain, producing narratives of startling originality from materials that are entirely second-hand. Every dream is a remix. Every image is a quotation taken out of context and placed in a new sentence. Every emotion is a chord struck on strings that were tuned by experiences you may have consciously forgotten, but that the brain has faithfully preserved in its deepest archives. The thalamus, in internal generation mode, is the conductor of this orchestra. It does not compose the music from nothing. It draws on everything the brain contains, everything it has ever received through the gate during all the waking hours of your entire life, and it recombines these elements into something that has never existed before and will never exist again. Each dream is unique. Each dream is unrepeatable. Each dream is a one-time performance in the empty theater of the sealed mind. And yet, even this extraordinary process is not the final destination of the sleeping brain. The hall of echoes, vivid and kaleidoscopic and limitless as it is itself a transitional space. The dreams that fill it are still activity, still construction, still the brain engaged in the work of processing and integrating and creating. But beneath the dreams, beneath the echoes, beneath the shimmering reflections in the infinite hall of mirrors, there is a deeper layer still, a place where even the internal cinema goes dark, where the self-generated signals of the thalamus slow to their most minimal rhythm, where the echoes themselves begin to fade, growing softer and more distant, like voices heard across an ever-widening expanse of water, until even the faintest whisper of internal experience dissolves into a silence that is not merely the absence of sound, but the absence of everything, the absence of image, the absence of narrative, the absence of self. A silence so total that it is not experienced at all, because there is no one left to experience it. The theatre is not just empty now. The theatre has forgotten that it is a theatre. The mirrors have gone dark. The echoes have faded to nothing. And in this nothing, in this deepest and most complete form of neural silence, the brain enters a state of restoration so profound that consciousness itself must be fully, completely, utterly absent for it to do its work. You are approaching this silence now. The echoes are growing softer, the reflections are dimming, the hall is vast and dark and very, very still. And somewhere ahead, in the deepest chamber of the sleeping mind, the final silence is waiting. You have arrived at the deepest place the human brain can go, below the dreams, below the echoes, below the shimmering, kaleidoscopic theatre of the unconscious mind, where memory and imagination dance their strange, unbounded dance. Below all of it, there is this, a stillness so complete, so total, so absolute, that the word silence does not do it justice. This is not the silence of a quiet room. This is not the silence of a held breath or a paused conversation or a moment of reflection before speaking. This is the silence of a mind that has, for all practical purposes, ceased to be a mind at all. The thoughts have stopped. The images have dissolved. The narratives that wove themselves through the dreaming brain have unraveled and drifted apart like smoke in a vast, windless sky. The self, that persistent, familiar presence that has narrated every moment of your waking life and colored every dream you have ever had, has gone quiet, not suppressed, not distracted, quiet. And in this quiet, in this extraordinary and sacred emptiness, the most important work your body will perform today is finally able to begin. This is slow wave sleep, the deepest stage of non-REM sleep, the stage characterized by delta waves, those vast, rolling oscillations of electrical activity that cycle at a frequency of less than 4 times per second. If the beta waves of waking consciousness were the choppy, rapid surface of a wind-blown sea, and the alpha waves were the gentle swells of a calming afternoon, and the theta waves were the slow, deep rolls of an ocean at dusk, then the delta waves are the movement of the ocean floor itself, tectonic, immense, so slow and so powerful that they are felt not as individual waves, but as a single, continuous, almost geological force. These waves are generated by enormous populations of cortical neurons firing in near-perfect synchrony, millions of cells switching on and off together in a rhythm so coordinated that it can be detected not just by electrodes on the scalp, but in some experimental settings, by sensors placed inches away from the head. The entire cortex is pulsing as one, rising and falling, rising and falling, like the breath of something so large that its inhalation takes a full second and its exhalation takes another, and in between, in the trough of each wave, there is a moment of almost complete neural silence. A moment when the cortical neurons are not firing at all. A moment of true, measurable, biological zero. And at the center of this slow, vast rhythm, the thalamus has reached its most extreme state of gating. The thalamic reticular nucleus, that thin shell of inhibitory neurons we met earlier, is now operating at maximum inhibition. The GABA-mediated suppression of the relay neurons is so thorough, so complete, so uncompromising that the thalamic gate is not merely locked, it is sealed, bolted, buried under a weight of neurochemical inhibition so heavy that no ordinary external stimulus can penetrate it. You are, in this moment, more disconnected from the physical world than you will be at any other point in the sleep cycle. A sound that would easily have roused you from stage 2 sleep will not reach you here. A touch that would have triggered a startle response during lighter stages will go unregistered. Even significant changes in temperature, in light, in the ambient environment of the room will fail to generate a conscious response. The signals are still being detected by the sensory organs. The nerves are still firing. The data is still arriving at the thalamic gate. But the gate is not merely closed. The gate has become a wall. And behind that wall, you are effectively gone from the physical world. Not dead, not unconscious in the way that anesthesia produces unconsciousness, but absent, withdrawn, existing in a state of such profound neurological isolation that the distinction between your inner world and the outer world has become absolute. There is no outer world, not for you, not now. There is only the interior, and the interior is not thinking, it is not dreaming, it is repairing. Picture a great city, not during the day, when the streets are crowded and the traffic roars and the buildings hum with the activity of millions of lives being lived simultaneously. Picture that city at 3 in the morning, the deepest hour. The streets are empty, the windows are dark, the shops are shuttered and the offices are closed and the parks are silent, and the only movement, the only activity in this vast, sleeping metropolis is happening below the surface, in the tunnels and the basements and the maintenance corridors that no citizen ever sees. Down there, in the hidden infrastructure of the city, the cleaning crews are working, the repair teams are active, the engineers are inspecting the pipes and the cables and the support structures that make the city's daytime life possible. They can only do this work now, when the streets are empty and the demands of the waking city have ceased. They need the silence. They need the emptiness. They need the absolute absence of traffic and commerce and human activity in order to access the systems that must be maintained. And so, the city gives them this gift, this window of stillness, this sacred, empty, necessary night. And in the morning, when the streets fill again and the lights come on and the millions resume their lives, the city will function because of the work that was done in the dark, because of the repairs that could only happen when everything else stopped. This is what your brain is doing right now. This is what the silence is for. And the primary mechanism through which this repair occurs is one of the most remarkable discoveries in modern neuroscience. It is called the glymphatic system, and its story begins with a simple almost humble observation. The brain produces waste. Like every organ in the body, the brain's metabolic activity generates byproducts. Molecular debris left over from the enormous energy expenditure required to keep 100 billion neurons firing throughout the waking day. Among these byproducts are proteins that, if allowed to accumulate, become toxic to neural tissue. The most well-known of these is beta amyloid, a protein fragment that, when it builds up in excessive quantities, forms the plaques that are the hallmark of Alzheimer's disease. During waking hours, beta amyloid and other metabolic waste products accumulate steadily in the spaces between brain cells. The brain has no lymphatic system in the traditional sense, no network of vessels and nodes like the one that clears waste from the rest of the body. For decades, neuroscientists puzzled over how the brain managed to keep itself clean. The answer, when it finally came, was astonishing. The glymphatic system is a network of channels formed by the support cells of the brain, the glial cells, specifically a type called astrocytes. These channels run alongside the blood vessels that penetrate the brain tissue, and they carry cerebrospinal fluid, the clear, colorless liquid that bathes the brain and spinal cord, deep into the neural tissue, where it flushes out the accumulated waste products and carries them away for disposal. It is, in essence, a washing system, a biological pressure washer that cleans the brain from the inside out. And here is the critical fact. This system operates at peak efficiency only during deep sleep. Only when the delta waves are rolling and the thalamic gate is sealed and the neurons of the cortex are cycling through their synchronized slow oscillations. Research has shown that during slow-wave sleep, the spaces between brain cells expand by as much as 60%, creating wider channels through which the cerebrospinal fluid can flow. The clearance of beta amyloid during deep sleep is dramatically more efficient than during wakefulness. The brain, in this state of absolute neurological silence, is literally washing itself, flushing out the toxic residue of a day's worth of thinking, perceiving, feeling, deciding, worrying, and processing. And it can only do this when you are gone, when the self has retreated, when the thalamus has sealed the gate so thoroughly that not a whisper of the external world can intrude upon this most essential and most vulnerable process. But the glymphatic system is only one dimension of what happens in this deep silence. The body, freed from the metabolic demands of consciousness, redirects its resources toward a cascade of restorative processes that touch virtually every system in the organism. Growth hormone, which is essential for tissue repair, muscle recovery, and cellular regeneration, is released in its largest pulse of the 24-hour cycle during the first episode of slow-wave sleep. The immune system, which has been modulated and partially suppressed by the stress hormones of waking life, surges into heightened activity, producing cytokines and other immune factors that patrol for pathogens and repair damaged tissue. The endocrine system recalibrates, adjusting the delicate balance of cortisol, insulin, leptin, and ghrelin that governs your stress response, your metabolism, your appetite, and your energy regulation. And at the most fundamental level, in the nucleus of individual cells, the machinery of DNA repair is activated. The ultraviolet damage, the oxidative stress, the accumulated errors in genetic transcription that occur naturally during the metabolic activity of waking life. All of these are addressed during deep sleep by enzymes that unwind the double helix, identify the damaged sections, and restore them to their correct sequence. You are being repaired at the level of your genetic code, and this repair requires the silence, requires the stillness, requires the absolute withdrawal of conscious activity that only the deepest stage of sleep can provide. Think about the weight of this. Think about what it means that every night your brain must effectively shut down the entire apparatus of conscious experience, must seal itself away from the world so completely that you cease to exist as a perceiving, thinking, feeling being, in order to perform the maintenance that keeps you alive and functional and sane. This is not a luxury. This is not a convenience. This is a biological necessity so fundamental that evolution has preserved it across hundreds of millions of years. Every vertebrate animal that has ever been studied sleeps. Every one of them passes through a stage of deep, slow wave activity in which the brain disconnects from the external world and turns its resources inward. The fish in the deep ocean, the bird on the branch, the mouse in the wall, the whale in the Arctic dark, all of them must go to this place. All of them must submit to this silence. All of them must temporarily surrender the very thing that defines them as living, aware creatures, their consciousness, in order to maintain the biological substrate upon which that consciousness depends. Sleep is not the opposite of life. It is the maintenance of life. And deep sleep, this state you are in now, or approaching now, this state of delta waves and sealed gates and glymphatic flow and hormonal repair and DNA restoration, this is the deepest maintenance there is. Imagine a mountain lake at night. Not a lake with waves or wind or any disturbance of any kind. A lake so high and so remote and so sheltered by the peaks around it that its surface has become a perfect mirror. Not a mirror reflecting light, for there is no light here, not in the way the waking mind understands light. A mirror reflecting nothing, a surface so still that it has ceased to be a surface at all and has become instead a void, a perfect, dimensionless, infinite void that extends downward as far as it extends upward, that contains nothing and is disturbed by nothing and reflects nothing, and yet is, in its absolute emptiness, the most complete and most necessary thing in the world. This is what your mind is right now. Not empty in the sense of lacking, empty in the sense of cleared, cleaned, restored to a state of such fundamental purity that when the morning comes and the surface begins to ripple again, and the reflections return, and the light pours in through the opening gate, what it will reflect will be sharper, clearer, more vivid, and more alive than it was the day before, because the lake was given this night, this stillness, this sacred, healing void. And so here, in the deepest silence, where the delta waves roll like slow thunder through the cortex, and the glymphatic fluid flows through the widened channels of the sleeping brain, and the hormones pulse, and the DNA repairs itself, and the immune system patrols the darkened corridors of the body, something is happening that goes beyond repair, beyond maintenance, beyond the mechanical restoration of systems and structures. In this silence, the very architecture of the self is being simplified, stripped down, reduced to its most essential form. The accumulated tensions of the day, the unresolved emotions, the habitual patterns of thought that have been running on automatic for so long that they feel like permanent features of your identity. All of these are loosened in the deep silence, not erased, but softened, loosened, made available for re-examination and reorganization when the brain eventually returns to a state capable of such work. The self that will wake in the morning will not be the same self that fell asleep. It will be rebuilt, refreshed, assembled anew from components that have been individually cleaned and repaired and restored to optimal function. And now, in this deepest place, something is beginning to shift once more. The delta waves, vast as they are not permanent. The slow oscillations that have held the brain in this state of profound silence are beginning, almost imperceptibly, to change their character. The sealed gate of the thalamus, locked so tightly that no signal from the external world could penetrate, is beginning to respond to new instructions from the brainstem, from the ancient regulatory centers that govern the cycling of sleep stages. Something is coming. Not wakefulness, something else. Something that requires the thalamus to release its grip not on the external world but on itself. To let go not of the senses but of the very framework that has maintained this ordered silence. The self has been absent, the mind has been empty, the body has been repaired, and now, in the void that remains, the conditions are being prepared for something that will require a different kind of surrender entirely. Not the surrender of the external world, not the surrender of sensation or thought or memory, but the surrender of the gatekeeper itself. The thalamus has held the keys all night. It has locked the gate and maintained the silence and overseen the repair of the sleeping brain with unwavering fidelity. And now, it is preparing to do the one thing it has not yet done. It is preparing to hand the keys over, to release its authority, to allow the brain to enter a state in which even the thalamus itself falls silent, and the mind, unguarded, ungated, unfiltered, is set free into a space where there are no walls, no doors, no locks, and no limits at all. There is a place beyond dreaming, beyond memory, beyond the farthest reach of imagination or thought or any experience that can be captured in language or recalled upon waking. It is not a place you travel to. It is not a destination that can be found on any map of the mind, however detailed, however carefully drawn. It is what remains when everything else has been removed, when the senses have been sealed away, when the dreams have dissolved, when the slow waves have rolled through the cortex, and the cleaning crews have done their work, and the hormones have pulsed, and the DNA has been repaired, and even the vast, rolling delta rhythm has begun to simplify into something more fundamental, more reduced, more absolute. It is the 0 point, the bottom of the well, the place where the self, that persistent narrator, that tireless interpreter, that voice that has accompanied every conscious moment of your existence since the day you first opened your eyes, finally falls silent, not asleep, not distracted, not elsewhere, silent, gone. And in its absence, something extraordinary is revealed, not a void in the sense of emptiness, but a void in the sense of pure, undifferentiated potential. The darkness from which everything you are, everything you have been, everything you will become, is renewed. The neuroscience of this state is humbling in its implications. During the deepest moments of slow-wave sleep, the connectivity between brain regions drops to its lowest measurable level. The thalamus, which has spent the entire night progressively tightening its gate, filtering, suppressing, locking, sealing, has now achieved a state of such thorough inhibition that it is no longer functioning as a relay station in any meaningful sense. The cortical regions that during waking life are bound together by dense networks of synchronized activity, the networks that produce the sense of a unified self, a continuous identity, a coherent observer witnessing a coherent world. These networks have largely disengaged from one another. The prefrontal cortex, the seat of self-reflection and executive control, has reduced its activity to a whisper. The default mode network, that constellation of brain regions that generates the inner monologue, the sense of I, the running commentary that narrates your experience even when you are doing nothing at all, has gone quiet. The brain is still alive. The neurons are still metabolically active. The blood is still flowing, and the glucose is still being consumed, and the cellular machinery is still turning. But the organized, integrated, self-referential activity that produces the experience of being someone, of being you, has temporarily ceased. This is the paradox at the heart of deep sleep. You are most alive, biologically, at the very moment you are least present as a conscious being. The restorative processes we explored in the previous chapter, the glymphatic flushing, the hormonal cascades, the immune activation, the genetic repair, all of these reach their peak intensity during the periods of deepest neural silence. The body pours its resources into restoration with a ferocity that is only possible when the enormous metabolic demands of consciousness have been temporarily lifted. Maintaining a conscious self, it turns out, is expensive. The brain, which accounts for roughly 2% of your body weight, consumes roughly 20% of your total metabolic energy during waking hours. And a significant portion of that energy goes not toward processing sensory data or coordinating movement, but toward the maintenance of the self model. The constant, effortful, computationally intensive process of constructing and sustaining the illusion that there is an I in here, looking out through these eyes, thinking these thoughts, experiencing this life. When that process stops, when the self-model is allowed to dissolve, the energy that was sustaining it becomes available for other purposes, for healing, for repair, for the deep, fundamental maintenance that keeps the organism viable. The dissolution of the ego is not a side effect of deep sleep. It is a prerequisite. Consider what this means about the relationship between consciousness and health. Every night, your body requires you to stop being yourself, to release the grip of identity, to let go of the story you tell about who you are and what you want and what you fear and what you remember. Not because that story is unimportant, but because the biological machinery that supports it needs time to be serviced. And the servicing cannot happen while the machinery is running. A mechanic cannot repair an engine while it is turning at full speed. A city cannot rebuild its roads while the traffic is flowing. And a brain cannot restore itself while it is simultaneously maintaining the computational miracle of conscious experience. And so every night, the thalamus performs what may be its most important function of all. It does not merely block the external world. It participates in the shutdown of the internal world as well, by cutting off the stream of sensory data that feeds the cortex, by disrupting the thalamocortical loops that sustain organized conscious activity, by contributing to the slow, synchronized rhythms that decouple brain region from brain region. The thalamus creates the conditions under which the self can safely dissolve. It holds the gate not just against the world outside, but against the world inside, against the dreams, against the memories, against the very identity of the sleeper, until nothing is left but the biological process itself, the breath, the heartbeat, the slow, quiet work of a body restoring itself in the dark. There is something ancient about this dissolution, something that predates not just human consciousness, but consciousness of any kind. The cycling between wakefulness and deep, restorative sleep is found in virtually every complex organism on Earth. Insects show periods of profound immobility during which they are unresponsive to stimuli, and their neural activity patterns change dramatically. Jellyfish, which possess no brain at all, merely a distributed network of nerve cells, exhibit behavioral states that meet the criteria for sleep. The biological imperative to periodically stop being aware, to withdraw from the world and enter a state of reduced responsiveness and deep restoration, is so fundamental to life that it appears to have evolved independently multiple times across the tree of life. It is not an invention of the complex brain. It is a requirement of any biological system that must maintain itself over time. The void you enter each night is not a product of human evolution. It is a product of life itself, a biological truth as old as the first cell that ever had to repair its own membrane after a day of metabolic activity. You are participating in something primordial, something that connects you not just to every human who has ever lived, but to every living organism that has ever needed to stop, to withdraw, to dissolve its interface with the external world, and to turn its resources inward toward the essential work of continuing to exist. And if you let yourself, if you release the last thread of resistance, the last flicker of the self that wants to observe, to understand, to narrate, to hold on, you can feel what this dissolution is like from the inside. Or rather, you can feel the edge of it. The actual center of it, by definition, cannot be felt because there is no one there to feel it. But the approach is something you know. You know it from every night of your life, even if you have never been able to describe it. It is the moment when the last thought does not complete itself, when a sentence begins in your mind and the words simply drift apart before it reaches its end, like letters dissolving in warm water. It is the moment when the last image in your mind's eye, the last fragment of a face or a place or a feeling, loses its edges and melts into a formlessness that is neither dark nor light, neither pleasant nor unpleasant, neither anything at all. It is the moment when the question, "Who am I?" is not answered, but simply ceases to be asked, because the one who was asking has gently, imperceptibly, without struggle or fear, or even awareness that it is happening, ceased to be. This is not death. This is the opposite of death. This is the state in which life renews itself. This is the womb. Not the womb of your mother, though the parallel is not coincidental. For the neural environment of the fetus in the weeks before birth is remarkably similar to the neural environment of deep, slow-wave sleep, a state of sensory isolation in which the developing brain organizes itself free from the interference of external input. This is the womb of the organism itself, the internal space to which you return every night to be reassembled, recalibrated, restored. The silence of the thalamus is not a deprivation. It is a gift, the most essential gift your biology offers you, the gift of temporary non-existence, the gift of being freed for a few hours each night from the relentless, exhausting, magnificent burden of being a self in a world, the gift of returning to the source, to the place where the energy that powers your waking life is generated, to the wellspring that fills the reservoir from which every thought, every emotion, every perception, every act of will and creativity and love that you will perform tomorrow will draw its strength. You are there now, or nearly there. The words you are hearing, if you are hearing them at all, have become very soft, very distant, very thin. They are the last signals to pass through a gate that is barely open, the faintest whisper of the external world reaching a mind that has almost completed its withdrawal. And soon, even these will fade. The thalamus will finish its work. The last connection will be gently, quietly severed, and you will be in the void, not falling into it, not sinking, simply being it. The void is not a place you enter. It is what you become when everything that is not essential has been released. And here in the void there is no time, no sequence, no before and no after. An hour can pass in what feels like a heartbeat, or a heartbeat can expand to fill what feels like an eternity, and neither experience is more true than the other, because there is no one measuring, no one counting, no one marking the passage of one moment to the next. The clocks of the external world continue to turn, but they are turning in a universe that has nothing to do with you. You are beyond their reach, beyond the reach of light and sound and gravity and consequence and memory and identity, and every structure that the waking mind uses to organize its experience into the thing we call a life. You are in the space between lives, the pause between breaths, the silence between notes that gives the music its shape. And this silence is not nothing. This silence is the canvas on which everything is painted, the darkness against which every light is visible, the stillness from which every movement is born. And the most beautiful truth about this place is that it is not foreign to you. It is not strange. It is not a distant realm that you must struggle to reach, or a mystical state that requires years of practice to achieve. It is your home. It is the place you return to every single night, as naturally and as inevitably as the tide returns to the shore. You have been here 100,000 times. You have been renewed here 100,000 times. You have dissolved into this darkness and been reassembled from it more times than you can count. And each time you emerged whole, restored, ready, alive. This is not a place of fear. This is the safest place you know, the only place where nothing is asked of you, the only place where nothing can reach you, the only place where the simple act of existing without purpose, without effort, without identity is enough. So let the last thread of wakefulness dissolve now. Let the final whisper of the external world fade into the warm, soft, infinite dark. The thalamus has done its work. The gate is sealed. The silence is complete. And you are held, as you have always been held, in the deep, still, ancient center of a process that is older than thought, older than memory, older than the first dream ever dreamed by the first mind that learned to sleep. You are where you belong. You are where you have always belonged. And the silence will hold you here, gently, faithfully, for exactly as long as you need. There is nothing left to do now, nothing left to think, nothing left to be. Only this stillness, only this depth, only this perfect, boundless, eternal dark. Rest now. The universe will wait. It always does. It always has. And when the light returns and the gate opens and the world pours back in with all its noise and color and beautiful, impossible demands, you will be ready. But that is later. That is a lifetime away. For now, there is only this, only the silence, only the dark, only the deep, only the still, only this.